and there was a dealer notice stating to drill a hole in the body panel to access the mechanism. What is up, YouTube? Welcome to Fred's Full Throttle. Over the past week or so, there's been a surprising number of new Z06s spotted, as well as some interesting news that came out. So rather than do my next deep dive on the options for the Z06, I figured I'd use this time to cover everything that's happened in the last week or so. There's a fair bit to cover, so let's get right into it. Alright, so a couple of weeks ago I shared some of the first photos of a black Z06. It wasn't a color many people had seen, and so that was pretty interesting. They were alright photos of a non-Z07 car, but didn't really have the best lighting. Well, Corvette Nut over at Corvette Forum posted a recent photo of a Z07 equipped car in black, complete with the carbon wheels, in direct sunlight. The car appears to also have the adrenaline red interior. Now the biggest thing that strikes me about this car is how many angles and lines the car has, and it looks super aggressive. The black especially blends in with the front arrow and the intakes, and the whole car looks like it's going about 150 miles an hour when it's sitting still. It's really interesting to see how that black really shows off the lines of the car, much more so than some of the other colors. Up next is a single interesting photo from Killboy.com. If you aren't familiar, Killboy is a photographer who parks along Route 129 in Tennessee and North Carolina and takes pictures of the cars that go by. Route 129 is better known as Tail of the Dragon at Deals Gap. The Dragon is famous for being one of America's most winding roads with 318 curves over 11 miles, as well as having no intersections, stops, or driveways along the way. Killboy takes pictures of pretty much everyone that drives on the road, which you can then purchase online after you've driven through. Frequently a destination for dedicated motorcyclists and car enthusiasts, he snapped an interesting picture this past week of a yellow Z06 with the Z07 package and noted that the Z06 had been out there testing all week. Now, besides being a coupe with the roof off, I noticed a few other interesting things about this photo. Most obvious is the big antenna on the roof. Not really sure what this is for, but it does really stand out. Next is that the car has no front or side badges denoting that it's a Z06, though this has been pretty common among some of the test cars that we've seen. However, the thing that really stood out to me was that the seats in the car appear to be Sparco racing seats, rather than any of the standard options that Chevy's going to be offering. Now, there are several potential reasons for this, among them being that this is an older test car when it was built, that they maybe didn't have the seats available, or that this car was involved in some higher speed benchmarking and they outfitted the car with race harnesses for safety at some point. But the reality is anyone's guess. I just thought this was neat, and I don't recall seeing this on other test cars, though it could have been that this is just more obvious because of the better lighting without having the roof on, combined with the big Sparco logo. Now up next, I wanted to quickly share these two great photos, again from Corvette Nut, of a standard Z06 in Elkhart Lake blue metallic parked along a street somewhere. This is one of my two favorite colors at the moment, Amplify Orange being the other, and even in standard trim, the front really pops in this lighting. Awesome photo, just wanted to share. Now up next, finally, we have some photos of a Rapid Blue Z06. Credit to John at Mid-Engine Corvette Forum for first sharing this. The car was spotted getting gas near the BGA production plant. In fact, the driver is none other than BGA's assistant plant manager, Nora Roper. You can see she's smiling in multiple photos, and in the two video clips that came out with the photos, you can see that she was quite excited. What a cool thing to finally see the car in this color. I know a lot of people were looking forward to it, and hopefully this gives everyone a better sense of how it looks in person. I'm sure we're going to be seeing more cars with this color pretty soon. Now, before I move on to the next segment, I just wanted to mention that it definitely feels like we're starting to see more and more Z06s around. It could just be perception, but it definitely feels like momentum is building. I really hope this means that we're getting close to getting those pricing numbers and hopefully the ordering books opening up soon. Here's hoping. Now, over this past week, an interesting headline came out directly from Chevy themselves. They posted a photo of a bright green Z07 equipped car, and they announced that they're going to be auctioning off an NFT of a Z06 in minted green. And if you win the auction, they'll actually throw in a one-of-one car in that color as a bonus. You can see what the NFT looks like here, as well as the photo Chevy included with the announcement. The hook is own the color, which apparently means that this will be the only Z06 ever to come out in this specific color from the factory. So you'll truly have a one-of-one car. I'm sure Rick Hendrick is already opening up his checkbook. Now the car is being auctioned off, well, the NFT is being auctioned off, on superrare.com with all the proceeds going to charity. Now the good news here is that while this specific color won't be resold again, it doesn't mean that Chevy can't sell another shade of green at some point in the future. This could be a way for them to test the waters and gauge interest, which seems like a good idea to me, given how many posts I've seen online of people wanting a metallic green option for the car. Now in some less than stellar news comes an update to the 2023 C8s. This apparently affects both the Stingray and the Z06. There is a change to the design of the rear hatch lid, which is removing the manual keyhole for getting into the car in an emergency. Currently, if the battery dies or the latch mechanism fails, you can use a physical key to manually cycle that mechanism and open the rear hatch. However, apparently, with the 2023 and onward cars, the manual key option is being removed, and there's a dealer notice stating to drill a hole in the body panel to access the mechanism. This will, of course, result in needing to replace the entire rear hatch. At first glance, this seems pretty shocking. However, I have to imagine this is an incredibly rare occurrence. Now, here are a few of my thoughts that come to mind, and hopefully will put you a little more at ease. In the lifetime of owning C8s so far, how many people have actually needed this manual release for the rear lid? The battery is in the front and can be accessed when the battery is dead via a keyhole in the driver's side door. So in the case of a dead battery, you don't need to actually access the back manually. You just jump the battery and then you should gain access to the rear hatch again. Also, if the rear hatch mechanism has failed, as long as it's a somewhat newer car, I would imagine this falls under a warranty issue, which means that the damage needed for them to fix the latch also falls under warranty. A crappy situation, but also HTCs would likely have a lower cost of repair, I'm guessing, due to the rear hatch being much smaller and without the rear window. But still, this is going to be costly no matter how you slice it. Lastly, and this is just my opinion, I'm guessing that this is something they decided on after seeing how many cars have had that rear hatch motor mechanism replaced. This could be such a statistically low number that they're using it as an opportunity to save on cost and complexity because the likelihood is so rare. Now, a few people online have speculated that it is purely a cost-cutting measure. But keep in mind that if these failures were common, and during the warranty period, which most C8s probably still are, Chevy would be on the hook for what is obviously going to be an expensive problem. This means that they think this will be so infrequent that the cost of occasionally dealing with a handful of these is less than the cost of the additional key cylinders and cables. Chevy is in the business of making money, and they aren't going to make a choice that intentionally costs them more money in the long run. All that said, I think the reality here is that most of us will never have to deal with this kind of scenario, especially that worst case, and can move along without worrying about it. Now up next, some news regarding the carbon fiber wheels for Z07 cars that have opted for that additional option. You may recall that recently I did a video about the wheels for the Z06, weighing the pros and the cons of the Carbon Revolution wheels versus the standard forged units. If you haven't seen it, I went into some pretty good detail, so I'll include a link to that in the description below. Now, per a recent post on Mid-Engine Corvette Forum, thanks again to John, there are some additional warnings in the owner's manual to consider about the carbon fiber wheel option. The first is that the length of the wheel studs for the carbon fiber wheels is different, in this case longer, than the standard alloy wheels. This means that if you plan to get a set of alloy wheels for daily driving and then save your carbons for the track, you're actually going to have to change the wheel studs as well each time you want to swap wheels. This is due to the Carbon Revolution wheels having a thicker hub. The risk here is that if you put the carbon wheels on the regular studs, you may be able to get to the appropriate torque spec, which is 140 foot-pounds, but not enough of the threads will have engaged, which could result in, at minimum, wheel wobble, but potentially even the wheel coming off of the hub during aggressive driving. Pretty serious stuff, so please take that warning seriously. The second warning is in regards to not installing the carbon fiber wheels in below freezing temperatures. The risk here is that due to the expansion and contraction when temperatures change, damage to the wheel hubs can occur if the wheel nuts are tightened to spec at those temperatures. This can also result in catastrophic failure of the wheels. Now the good news here is that it's a pretty low likelihood that anyone who is tracking their car is installing wheels at those cold of a temperatures, much less doing track driving at below freezing temps. But still, the risk is worth heeding and planning accordingly. Just another thing to consider if you want to opt for what's probably going to still be a very expensive option. And lastly, I wanted to end on a high note with some really good news. Credit to John again from Mid-Engine Corvette Forum for sharing this information. Over the past week or so, Chevy released a comparison guide pitting the C8 Z06 against several other top-shelf supercars and one near hypercar, showing how the Z06 not only compares, but in many cases will outperform them. The cars they chose to compare against are the Audi R8 V10, the new Porsche 911 GT3, the Ferrari F8 Tributo, and the McLaren 720S. What's notable here is not so much that Chevy is comparing themselves to these performance cars, automakers do this all the time, but rather that they are being pretty formal and pointed about it. They provide many of the relevant figures of each of the cars in an easy-to-decipher format and are really calling out those other makers. A few of the highlights that I noticed. They unfortunately did not mention the pricing of the Z06, which to me at this point is getting a little silly, especially when they note that the price is a con for most of the other cars. Now, I don't disagree that the Z06 will cost significantly less, but come on, Chevy, give us something to work with. Next, and interestingly, they note that 14 miles a gallon for city and 23 miles per gallon highway ratings on the R8 are not good, going so far as to say that the power and torque of the Z06 greatly exceed the values for the R8 V10 and that it gets better fuel economy. That at least gives us a little bit of a ballpark to start looking at for where this might fall for fuel economy. Also, they were surprisingly complimentary to their rival cars, praising quality, performance, and interior finishes. I applaud them for that. I think that's pretty cool. There were a few accuracy issues in the data, including the wrong redline figure for the GT3, which famously is 9,000 RPM, and the price of the Ferrari was inconsistent across a few of the pages. I just thought this was a really interesting exercise performed by Chevy to give a better sense of what they're actually shooting for. As I've covered in earlier videos, Chevy was benchmarking with a Porsche 911 GT2 RS and the Ferrari 458 Italia, and they are on record saying that they are aiming for the performance of the GT2 RS with the sound, character, and charisma of the 458. Whoops. This list seems to confirm that they've achieved that and then some. Pretty awesome to see. Now this week, due to all the things I wanted to cover, I'm going to skip the viewers ride section, but it will be returning soon. If you'd like to see me cover your car, please send an email to fredsfullthrottle@gmail.com with a picture or two and tell me a little bit about your car. I'll do my best to include every submission sent in. It just may take a little time over the span of several videos. Also, I wanted to say a special thanks and shout out to John at Mid-Engine Corvette Forum for reaching out this past week. I'm incredibly humbled and flattered by your offer to have me post my Corvette-related videos on the forum, and I really appreciate it. Thanks again, and it was really great talking with you. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and until next time, Fred out!